screams game manager to me at this point. And then as far as Ethan goes, that's another guy that I love to watch throw the ball. He has a lot of really good arm strength. His ability to evade pressure and make plays with his legs outside the pocket is not really anything that's going to be dynamic. And another thing is that he crumbles under pressure. That's something that's very scary because it doesn't matter how much of a threat you are with your arm if you can't place the ball in the right place whenever the pocket collapses. So I think that he's a guy that has a lot of raw talent, but I think it's going to take a lot of development. And I think a lot of what he's got going on is in his upper body, but when you look at his lower body, I mean, he doesn't set his feet correctly sometimes, and there's a lot to work on there just footwork-wise.
And as far as, because, I mean, Fromm had, I think, like 8-inch hands. And
yes, he's even smaller than Joe Burrow's. And once again, I'm not concerned about that. I'm not concerned about hand size. I'm concerned about what he's done on the field. And like I said, there's just been some questionable things that he's done, and I don't think that he's really given me enough to classify him as anything outside of a game manager at this point. And like I said, he could go on and have a great NFL career, and Joe Burrow could be a bust, and I could be wrong about everything. But I think that Jake Fromm's going to be one of those guys that you take him as he is, and he can get things going for you, and he can command the offense well, but he's just not going to be anything super special.
And as far as players who actually aren't looking like busts, LSU wide receiver Justin Jefferson comes out, 200 pounds, like around 6'2", 6'1", runs 4.43, pretty much quiets any, doubts about his speed. Where do you think he's done from, his last game and the title game to the combine? Where do you think his stock is, and where do you think he might fit in the first round?
Well, I think it's absolutely gone up after he ran that 4.4 for sure. I think he goes somewhere around toward the top to mid first round, but I definitely don't see a guy like him falling to the second round, especially like I said, after he did what he did today. Very, very talented receiver. That's the thing about this receiving core, though, at LSU this year is everybody was so talented. This is the best, most well put together team I think that we've ever had.
And with that, they did lose so much. But you look at even like some of the underclassmen, like Patrick Queen coming out, and Pete and I have this thing, mostly me, about the Raiders not drafting LSU linebackers or corners. And like the last 5 have all been insanely good and insanely fast. So where do you think the starters from that national title team, like a guy like Cushenberry or even Lewis, where do you think some of those guys are going to fall?
Well, I saw that somebody had Cushenberry, I think it was Bucky Brooks, as his best interior, and one of his best interior guys.
Yep,
yeah.
Guard
so
and center.
I think based on that projection, he goes relatively early. But I think he's a guy that goes maybe somewhere around second round. But that's kind of a weird thing because everybody has him all over the place. So he's going to be one of those wild card guys. You don't really know exactly where he lands until it happens.
And so let me ask you this. Let's back up a little bit. Like, overall, just where you're at, what has been your favorite experience about covering that national title team? What's the moment in the locker room or whenever that you remember most from that experience?
Well, Odell Beckham Jr. had the good graces to literally physically move me out of his way, along with some other people. I think there was something wrong with him when he was on the field, but I won't go into that. I'd say that my favorite part about covering the national championship, though, is just the fact that I've spent roughly the past 5 years of my life kind of in this niche focused on SEC quarterbacks and LSU quarterbacks. Like, I cover all quarterbacks, but those are the guys that I really zero in on. And I've covered all the guys from the past, but as far as guys I've covered while they're playing, while my career's been going on, when I started, I mean, it's been Brandon Harris, Danny Etling, and then Joe Burrow. So, I mean, to have a guy like Joe Burrow come in is just totally changes the stereotype of the quarterback position at LSU. And so to have the opportunity to really, because I started covering this guy as soon as the rumors started that he was going to transfer, and whenever I started, nobody else was really covering him as much as I was. And so looking back at that, There's a lot of high school coaches that he had that now are no longer able to be contacted because they don't work for the school anymore. And I got a lot of really good interviews from, guys that have played with him since they were in elementary school, coaches that coached him as soon as he went into high school. So I guess just being able to follow that so closely and to know that I was zeroed in on somebody like that and like trying to take him to the side every week, just always having a question for him, always making sure that I had just like that key Joe Burrow story every single week, even before he was a big deal, and having all that coverage and having been there from kind of every step of the way since he came off the bench at Ohio State and transferred over here. I think that's been really special, and that's something that's really meant a lot to me to cover. And then to see him go all the way.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. So I'm just curious, like where did this natural journalistic, instinct come from? Because, I know people, 10 times your senior who aren't that smart, so is that something that you were born with, you think, or is it something that you've just been doing it long enough that you're growing into it?
Well, I was raised around a family that was crazy about the Tennessee Titans, and so it's kind of a part of my culture, I guess, growing up, because I'm from Houston. I lived in Nashville for a while, and everybody in my family has always been absolutely obsessed with the Titans, and so I didn't really have an option but to grow up with it. I actually started out showing dogs, and dogs, they were going to be my career. And then I decided, I went to a football game with my dad. I'd been to a few before, and then he took me to one when I was 15, and I had this essay that was due in English class, this 8-page essay, and it could be about anything. And I noticed that I knew a lot about the Titans. I knew a lot about football, but I wasn't really into all the intricacies of it. And I noticed that everyone was blaming everything that was happening on Zach Mettenberger, and I was like, I really, even though I don't know as much as you guys do, I think that there's no logical way that this can be all his fault. And so I started researching, and before I knew it, I had an 8-page deep dive on how Zach Mettenberger could possibly be better than Marcus Mariota in the long run, and about why it wasn't his fault and all the other things that are wrong with the team. And so I turned it in, and my teacher told me I should go into sports journalism, and so I kept that in my portfolio and wrote a few other things. And then I submitted it to like a bunch of small networks, and then Campus Sports took me at what either I was 15 or 16 when they took me. I don't think they knew how old I was. They just took me based on my application. And so I started there. Then I kind of grew and went to the Fan-Sided Network, SB Nation, and then when I was 17, USA Today Sports Media Group launched their wire sites, and I moved over from Fan-Sided to USA Today for the Titans coverage, and then stayed with SB Nation for LSU. And I was calling around, doing as many interviews as I possibly could, just trying to get my foot in the door any way that I possibly could. And then before I knew it, Valley Shook had never been credentialed before to football, and suddenly we were credentialed through football, and I just traveled everywhere that I could. And at one point I went to be an understudy for the Jaguars for a day. Same thing with the Titans. And that was a 13-hour drive to Jacksonville and then 10-hour drive to Nashville. But I just taken advantage of everything that I possibly could. And then, like I said, before I knew it, I looked up and I was like 18, and I had been hired as the managing editor of the Titans Wire, and I was credentialed to NFL football games. I was credentialed to college. And then I think what a lot of people don't realize, like even people in student media, is that your credential can be used in so many places. Like if there's former SEC athletes, former Tennessee Titans in the XFL, congratulations, you can cover the XFL. If you want to go to the Senior Bowl, if you want to go to I haven't gone to the Super Bowl before, but that's applicable.
Yeah,
just
definitely.
All those little different things, passing academies, stuff like that. And I think that what I've done, I acknowledge I've gone very far. I've had a lot of people tell me that, but I think that the reason why I guess a lot of other people haven't been as far as I have at my age is just because, A, it's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of sacrifices I've made, all the things that I could have done differently that might have been fun, that I decided to do something else to help my career. And then just the fact that some people are, I guess, too afraid to be aggressive and to apply for all those different things. But, it's worked out pretty well.
Do you feel like being so young, do you feel like you kind of benefited from, not knowing? Like not knowing whatever limitations, a school or industry, would have put on you if you were more farther along?
I mean, I guess that's helped me to an extent.
Yeah.
Just being young, but I mean, I've
like
always
no
had
fear.
that just really aggressive mentality. And John McClain was one of the first people that helped me. One of my first mentors, and that was one thing he told me. He said, "Whatever you do, he's like, you're very aggressive and never stop being aggressive." And so I sent all the emails out and, like I said, applied for all the credentials, and it was denied for a while because I was like 16 years old with a super small network, but eventually. It eventually worked out. I mean, you get told no a lot. You have a lot of things that don't go through that you wish would have gone through. But, I mean, now it's less of me reaching out to people, which I will from time to time with things that I want to do. But, I mean, there's a lot of PR people and interview opportunities that come to me now. And I think that as you continue to grow, a lot more will come to you as opposed to you going to it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you're still on the ground. Like, no, the sky's the limit for you, for sure. At some point... everyone's going to be paying you to be everywhere, so just keep going. But
and with that, I mean, you said you touched on the XFL, and I'm out here covering the Wildcats. You're covering the Roughnecks?
Roughnecks? I've been covering the Roughnecks. I've found ways to cover them in connection to Titans, in connection to LSU, and connection to SEC players, and then just I cover quarterbacks in general, and I've been blessed enough to have PJ Walker on the field in front of me with my home team, I suppose you could call them, considering that they're the closest team to me. So I would say that I cover the team directly, and then I also cover, like I said, the ins and outs of the former Titans players, all the former SEC guys. But I do that with the whole league. And one team that I think I've really established a good relationship with now is the St. Louis Battlehawks, because they have a lot of former SEC guys. And, I mean, they've been really great to work with. And I think one of the best things about the XFL is just how great, at least for me, I've heard different stories, but at least for me, I've had really good access. A lot of the people are super supportive. They like having the media around, and it's just a really good environment.
Yeah, and how have you noticed kind of the fanfare? Because in L.A., they kind of just immediately flocked to the Wildcats, and they just beat the DC Defenders. And Nick Bossett, even though they lost that game, he had like a touchdown, like a 38-yard touchdown at the end of the game. And there's a bunch of LSU guys. There's a lot of guys who maybe were big names in college, and they found their way to this league, but they're kind of becoming stars in their own right.
Yeah, there's 9 former LSU players between the 8 teams. A lot of them have been very quiet in their production so far. Anthony Johnson's had a couple of impressive games. I know that a couple of people were talking about the little bit that Colin Jeter had done. I haven't seen him on the stat sheet lately. I think that he's injured. I know he was listed as an available tight end, but there was no official injury report that I found that said that he's out. Jalen Collins, I would say, has definitely been a bit of a disappointment. He was out, I believe, with an ankle injury this past week, but the week before he absolutely got burned by another receiver, which was not good. And he was kind of supposed to be the star as far as all the former LSU guys go, because he's the most well-known, but I mean, he just hasn't been able to get it together off the field from what I've been told, at least. But Nick Brissett, he had that 38-yard touchdown run, and that's by far the standout so far as first touchdown by a former LSU Tiger in the XFL so far. But
and with that,
I'd like to see those guys do a little bit more, because I do the recaps every week, and it's just like, oh, he had 2 targets and he
showed
up.
He got dressed.
Very boring.
Here's the pig.
The best thing about Collins, honestly, in the XFL has been his visors. And that's not saying much, but his visors have been sick pregame. I'll give him that. But as far as going back to the combine, you look at Steven Sullivan, because Thaddeus Moss, they find out with his medicals, he had pretty much a fractured foot. But Sullivan put on a show today. And he put on a show at the Senior Bowl, too.
That was very surprising, because I will admit that he calls himself Stefan. I think that he literally changed his name. I think that's how it happened. It went from him being Steven to Stephon because I guess that makes him sound more